Thank you for joining us this evening for the Artist Exchange, a group created by and for artists to share new work, ideas, resources, and opportunities monthly over a glass of wine or tea, as you prefer. So grab your beverage and join us as we discover the work of two Bay Area artists, Carol Newborg and Isiah Daniels. I'm Shelley Rugg, the Executive Director at Gallery Route 1. And for our presentation today, we ask that you please stay muted unless we ask you to unmute. For best viewing, select Speaker View from the top right corner of the Zoom viewing screen. We want you to know that we are recording today's presentation for future viewing on our website and YouTube channel. Now, please join me in welcoming our host, Pamela Blotner. She's an artist, educator, and curator who lives and works in the Bay Area. She has worked as a sculptor illustrator for the Houston Zoo in Houston, Texas, and the Leatherback Trust Conservation Organization, and as an artist designer for Human Rights Watch, Physicians for Human Rights, and the UC Berkeley Human Rights Center. Blotner's sculpture and drawings have been exhibited in Europe, Asia, Africa, and the United States. She has taught at a number of universities throughout the US, and she is co-curator and founder with Mee Preckler of Artists Beyond Boundaries. Please welcome Pamela.
Thank you, Shelley. That was lovely and very well delivered. I think I'm going to have to shorten it for next time. But in the meantime, tonight's episode is called Artists Unlocking the Past. And I'm not going to explain that, but I think as we talk, I think you'll understand why I chose that title. Okay, I'm very excited to have Carol Newborg and Isiah Daniels with us tonight for many reasons. And I'm just getting to know them, which is great. And these are two artists whose lives and work have been influenced by memory and communication with the outside world, others in their lives and with themselves. So let's begin by introducing Carol. And Carol is, she is a Bay Area artist, and she's a sculptor amongst many other things. And she says that making art gives her a sense of repair and healing. During COVID, she says, I started understanding more about my family's history during the Holocaust and how it affects me, and creating work about that, which helps me and perhaps others. Okay, that said, please step forward, Carol.
Hi. Thank you so much for hosting this opportunity to talk and share. And I really like Gallery Route 1. I love going there. So thank you. I think I'll just get started with my slides. I'll explain that I have a studio at home out back, and I was able during COVID, like many of us, to have a lot of time alone. So I was out in the studio a lot, and it really gave me time to focus on elements of my life and stories I'd heard that I hadn't really focused on. And I was meanwhile listening to a lot of books that were relating to Black Lives Matter, African-American history, and to Holocaust history. And so that combination of working and listening and thinking about how we are and I am now a result of so many things from the past came together. And there's an old story in my family, a reality that I grew up with, that, we're from Chicago originally, and my mother's family, her parents had come over before, like late teens, early 20s, and done okay. And, my grandpa was a tailor. And then there was this cousin, my mother's cousin, that had post-war, he had survived Auschwitz, and he is a tailor also. And he had met a wife in the DP camps, and they'd come to Chicago, and my grandparents had tried to sponsor them, but they had the tailor shop with the whole family of 5 in the back room, and they weren't allowed to sponsor another couple and have 7 people in the room. So, but Sam and Jean got over there anyway. And I just always, it wasn't talked about a lot, of course. And that's how a lot of things are in my family and many others. I think it was just, and too fresh and raw for the generation. So it just wasn't really processed. And so in my studio, I started thinking, and I've worked with this idea before, but it became a lot more vibrant for me now, thinking about how my, yes, there's the first slide. Yeah. My cousin Sam had become the personal family tailor for some of the high command families. And yet he'd lost people in his own family. So here he was making German kids clothes. And, at the same time, not even being able to, the little Jewish kids weren't surviving. So that led to, I did some research I was looking at Jewish kids' clothes from the 30s and 40s and German kids' clothes. And of course, other than the star, they were similar clothes. And I started knitting sort of memory pieces of the ghosts of the clothes and the wearers, and knitting them very loosely, very, not literal, but, enjoying actually thinking about the collars and, the shapes and working a little bit with color. And then I would layer those in between 2 layers of silk for that moiré effect. And also that way, then that you can't quite touch them. They're kind of half hidden and half there, half not. So they're memory pieces. And I call this series For the Lost Children. It's a memorial. And I made, I think by now, about 30 of them. And I'm getting to the point where I really need to photograph them properly and, and document them and work out exactly how I'll hang them. But let's see, next slide, please. So here's a few more. So I was playing a lot also with, working with when they're really hidden by the darker cloth and or the, when they sort of are right there in the paler silks. And also some of them I would just drop them, and others they were like sort of arranged as if they're flying or moving, giving them some movement, some connection to what they might have been at some point. So next slide, please. So yeah, sometimes, and I worked a lot with, being very funky with the knitting, letting the holes develop. And all of this helped me think a lot about the history behind this, and not just for me and my family, and how now it's always true, but it seems especially now in our American culture, the whole fact that, we have to know our history to not make the same mistakes over and over. So this is, for me, something to keep it real, keep it connected, and, and showing it and sharing it with people to hope to, bring up these conversations with other families with these experiences, or different but related experience of loss and memory, and how important memory is for us to have strength on. And another piece of it, next slide, please, is the, not only connecting to a personal past, but a cultural past, and connecting to an identity and culture that's obviously living in the US, well, probably anywhere in the world, but, especially where we're all so distant, we run around, and we're personally living on the other side of the country from where I grew up, and what's left of my family is mostly back east. And, it's disconnection, and the work helps me have more of a sense of connection. So that's another element that I, hope to share, because I think making artwork, and especially for me, making tactile artwork, helps me feel a sense of connection, and something that I hope others can experience too with my work. Next slide. And some of them are very tiny, which was a little daunting at first, believe it or not. It was like, do I really want to do the baby clothes, versus the elementary school age? It just was weird. Next slide. And this shows you it really well, the moire effect. And it also, there's just something so wonderful about working with fabric, working with yarn, and the process of making in itself that I think is healing. Even if I'm making things that are sort of not whole, or, are symbolically not all there, and, tacking them down and working just in the silk and letting it hang and be loose, it's still, there's a very healing quality to working for me. I mean, I worked in ceramics for a long time too. There's something very healing for me with 3D materials, with working, and fiber is wonderful for, it's slightly magical that way. And I have to say, with ceramics, I started my work in the prisons with women, making a ceramic studio for women at a prison in Southern California in the 80s. And it's just phenomenal what gathering a group of people who otherwise don't know each other, and working in clay together. And there's just, the physical act of making and working with the clay and sharing that experience in a studio with others, felt, it just offers, I don't know anything else quite like that. I guess maybe if I could sing, it might be like being in a chorus or something, but it's a connection. Next slide, please. There's a flying soul. Next slide. I think, yes. And then these are the other pieces, related but different, that were again part of my examining my past and owning, getting to know it more, sort of. And I've worked in and out of the prisons for almost 40 years now with the arts programs, and organizing exhibits, and doing, like I said, clay for the first 7 or 8 years, I guess. And there was, there are so many things that are deeply disturbing about prison. But one of the things that I'm especially aware of now, I've been at San Quentin about 10 or 11 years, is that insanely long sentences. Hello?
Yes, I'm sorry to interrupt you at this point, but I should have given you a longer introduction. I wanted them to hear about you as an artist, but will you give them a very brief introduction, how you got involved teaching in the arts and corrections program?
Sure. Yeah, I studied, I got an MFA focusing on ceramics at Berkeley. And while I was working there, I started doing work study jobs while I was going to school. And I ended up working community jobs. That's what I was interested in. So I worked at Creative Growth, and then with senior centers. And then I ended up doing, working through adult ed, teaching in like the psych ward up at the county jail in Contra Costa, and then at the psych ward in the one was the mental health ward, and the other part was the mental health ward in the jail, several off and on for a year or two. And that was just like fascinating and completely educational because I had no idea how to do it. It's like I wasn't a trained art therapist, but I moved to Southern California about 1982 and got people connected me to UCLA Extension Arts Reach, which was had the programming from the California Arts Council and the Arts and Corrections money. So they sent me out to CRC, a prison outside of LA. And there's a women's side at the time. And they had an old shack, literally like that was full of old desks. It was a luxury resort hotel turned into a prison that had been a Navy hospital for a while. So it was a beautiful building. And then they gave me, I don't know, the room was maybe 15 by 15 or less. And I got kilns, all this through the California Arts Council and money that the state had allocated. And I started teaching ceramics at the prison with the women. And eventually that led to organizing shows too, but it was fascinating work. And the women were, working in community with the women there. I mean, it was just always an education for me, everything and everybody I met. And so eventually I ended up being a community outreach person, organizing exhibits during the, the like fringe festival kind of things LA had. We once had it was a klezmer band come to the men's prison CIM and perform on the yard, or again, affiliated with the theater festival that was like the fringe part of after the Olympics had happened there. We just had tremendous things, lots of shows at LA City Hall. And so eventually when I was back up in Northern California, I started working at San Quentin again. And San Quentin, I mean, not again, but San Quentin has a lot of lifers, a lot of men doing 7 to life, but they keep coming up to board and they end up doing like 40 years and just insane amount of time of a whole lot of wonderful people now that have done a lot of work on themselves and have grown up fully. And so this is, I'm doing a whole long series. I've just started in the last year. This is for Joe, who did 7 years, one of the shorter sentences. Next slide, please. And this is for Omid. This is a 10-year sentence. Again, because I'm getting started, I'm doing the shorter sentences, but working with the wire and wrapping it with the cloth and make each segment, each loop, they're actually originally they were sort of teardrops. Like that tattoo of like 4 years or 4 times you've done time, 4 tattoos anyway. So and just wrapping and then wrapping the wire that they're put on it's helping me sort of own this long time spent visiting prisons and dealing with people who have had a lot of trauma and just helping me process it. So I think there's one more slide. And I think my time's up. Yeah. So this is for Henry. So that's what I'm in process with now, is the sentence series. And I'm going to have to do some that are really big because some of the sentences are 30 years, 40 years, 45 years. So there's a lot of work and healing that we need. So, okay.
Okay, thank you, Carol. That was really wonderful. And each time I hear you speak and I see your work, I learn a lot more. And so thank you again. And now we're going to move over to talk with Isiah. And Isiah Daniels is kind of a Renaissance man. I don't know him very well, but I would be surprised if there were many things he doesn't do. He has had a difficult life and it informs his artwork and his music and his life in general. He sometimes calls his paintings and drawings the reality of what beauty can grow from in our tears. So thank you, Isiah. Take it away.
Take it away, I will. Okay, so first of all, let me say I'm grateful to be here, and I'm thankful to you, Shelley and Pamela, for the invitation. And Carol, it's always good to see you, like a protege of mine, you know. So it's great to be here. To get started, a little bit about me. My name is Isiah Daniels. I am a self-taught artist. All of my paintings originate from emotions. I came out of a abusive childhood into an abusive world, and then into an abusive prison system for 21 years inside and 5 years outside, with that same little sentence Carol spoke about, a 7 to life. And so, with that being said, most of my paintings are, things that are going wrong in my life or that were going wrong in my life. Like I was saying, I'm going to the board, getting turned down, until it gets to the point where I have to find something or some way to release these emotions without them being negative. So I found my way into art. You can put my first slide up. Okay, and as you see the Mwazi art.com. I paint up under the name of Mwasi Fuvi. Mwasi meaning child born into suffering. To rebel, and Fuvi meaning child born into suffering. So it basically was the sentence of a rebellious child born into suffering. And my rebellion was not just because I was a bad child. My rebellion was because I was a hurt child. This first piece is it's called Patience, because one thing about getting out of prison, you had to be able to walk into that prison room, that prison at board hearing, and explain to them, to show to them a nexus between what took place in the past to what took place at the time of your crime to what has taken place now that makes you so different. And you just think about trying to get all that done from men who are, and I got a high school education, but as far as knowing the psychological aspects of my mind, I wasn't very good at that, apparently, because I did so much time in prison. But this painting here, it was called Patience. And during this here time, I was making changes in my life. I had been in prison now for about a good 10 years, 11 years. And I'm finally starting to see people go home. And there was nothing more than I longed for in life than also to go home. So what I had to do was make some changes. I had to find some kind of patience. And this is why I did this piece here. This piece is stipple, it's all dots for definition, just dot, 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 dot. It took me 6 months. And that's what helped me to get my patience. It's a painting right behind this next one. Can you go to the next screen, please? It's the same thing. It's all stipple, everything, all dots. And what I was trying to teach myself was how to sit and be patient, because I was not a patient person. I needed everything done, and I needed it done now. I was that way in my life, on my job, and in relationships. And because of that, I lost all those things, at least more than once. And this paint piece right here is called Contemplation. The reason I called it that was because this is when I really first started really thinking about, what am I doing wrong? Why am I not able to get out of prison? Why am I going to the board over and over and over and still can't get out of prison? And I had to start thinking about it. And what it wound up being was because all I ever done all my life was fight. Whether I fought with the abuse I was being subjected to, whether I fought with the kids at school who teased me, whether I fought in the military, whether I fought with drug addiction and on the streets. The point is, I fought all my life. So it had to get to a point now I'm in prison and I'm still fighting. I'm fighting with the guards. I'm fighting with, we have racial wars going on in these prisons. And I'm just constantly fighting. I needed to stop fighting. And when I did this piece here, it was when I really started thinking about what I need to do. The next piece, please. So this piece here, I call it Old Folsom, but in actuality, this is exactly what it looks like in Carson section in San Quentin. Carson section was an area where when you first come into prison, in the reception of the prison system here in California in the northern area, they send you to San Quentin. Carson was for people who had life sentences, such as myself. Like Carol spoke earlier, I had a sentence with 7 to life, which means after 7 years, I could possibly be paroled if I meet the suitability requirements that at that time were impossible. But this is what Carson section looks like. It's done off of memory. And if you, on the left-hand side facing the screen, those are the cells, and those are the tiers. Those tiers went up 5 floors, at least 50 to 60 feet up into the air. And during some of the wars, some men jumped, and then in some cases, some men were thrown off. So it was very dangerous in these kind of stacked up tiers, because at the time, there was no wire between the bars to keep people from being pushed, thrown, or jumping. Next one, please. Okay, so on this painting here, it's a busy piece. It's called the birth of the Black man. And throughout life, life has always been depicted with waterfalls and in water. It shows life. And so on this piece here, where the giraffes and stuff in the background, it showed the motherland. And that little area right behind his shoulder, where she's a little boat. During the theft of Africans in Africa, and bringing them to America to make slaves out of them, the ships couldn't get close to the shore because the water wasn't deep enough. So they found a spot where the water was deep next to a cliff, and they bored their way through it. So when the Africans seen their mothers and their children and their fathers and their family members being taken through this passage and never being seen again, they start calling it the door of no return. And that's why I put that there, because there's so many African men, women, and children went through this here passageway, never to be seen again. So this picture shows the birth up in the sky. As time went on, there was the birth of the new Black man, and that's, you see the woman pregnant. But this man here, his only road was a road to incarceration. This is Soledad State Prison, is exactly how it looks. And there we sit, or these men, they sit, and they just waste away until their life is redone again. And so this picture was basically me. I started off as I believe, a good child, even with the hurt. Then as time went on, I started fighting, like I said earlier, and I was led down this same road to incarceration, where I sat for 21 years, wasting away. All right, next slide. This picture here is called Agony. And what it showed was my agony. But it also, this picture was a declaration of what I also learned. So because, my only thing was, in the background, you see the man climbing out of the sewer, was trying to get out of this sewer I was stuck in, and I had been there. The moon and the sun in the sky is my ideal of how much time I had been there, where it just started to blend in together, it didn't matter no more. The clock in the background, it comes, I love Dolly, his work, and I used his clock. But the point is that I felt like I was giving all this distorted time for my crime in a broken justice system. You can see with the crutches, where time was just being dispensed like domino pieces. It's just throwing them out there and just locking us up for years. And I've always blamed everybody for what has happened to me. It's true that some bad things in my life did cause me to go astray, but I made a lot of decisions also that made my life even worse. And what this picture here means is that in my agony, I've always said what people have done to me, but I never realized how much it was me that held me down the most. And that was my hand around me, and it's holding me down. It took a lot for me to start admitting that the man was not my problem. Next piece. This one here, it was a really painful piece. First of all, I hate painting the ducks and the geese and all this stuff in the bottom. But anyhow, so I was living in Battle Creek, Michigan with my favorite cousin in the whole wide world. And because I couldn't swim, my cousin drowned in my hands, basically. I mean, I had the tip of his fingers. He had went down the last time. I was scared to get in the water. I couldn't swim, not to save him or save myself. And I had his fingertips when he went down the last time, and he never came up no more. And the people who were in charge of my life, who called themselves parents, grandparents, or whatever, they blamed me. And that stayed with me a lot of years. I remember that night that I just cried and cried. But the fact is that it wasn't my fault. But I was a child, and that's what they told me. All right, next piece. This piece here was for an Indian brother. I painted this painting for someone. And unfortunately for this guy, he had paid me. I had finished it. He's from Northern California, from the Black Bear tribe. I think he was telling me his name was Black Bear, but their tribe worshiped the black bear and the brown spotted hawk. And so I had did this painting for him. And I was coming out to the yard. It was in a level 4 institution. I won't say which one it was, but we was in a level 4 institution, which means maximum security. And so how this works, you have a level 5, it's super max, no movement, just constant lockdown. Level 4, maximum security, always being monitored, a lot of lockups, a lot of racial riots, a lot of stabbings. And so this here day, I came out to bring this painting to him, had it all rolled up nice and neat for him. And by the time I got within 10 feet of him, some guys ran up and stabbed him, and he died. And so I still have this painting, and I'll probably always have this painting. And the only thing that I can relate it to him is if you look up under the feathers on the right side, that snowbank turns into a sky, and you see these 2 hawks flying in the background. And and I just hope that's him and his that one who was waiting for him, sharing their life. All right, next piece, please. That might be the last one, isn't it? It is. Okay. But is ultimately, I guess, like I was saying earlier, all the pieces that I paint, they relate to my life or what I knew as being my life. Most of them have teaching lessons for me. Like I said, I first had to learn patience. Then I start contemplating on what I needed to do. Then I had to start finding who I was as a person. Then realizing that there was a better place than just plain incarceration. And what I find important about this here, sitting at this art exchange, is that I was also at San Quentin, and I worked inside of San Quentin as an inmate with Carol Newburgh, who was an instructor there for us, which it took me a minute once I started contemplating on what I wanted to do with my rest of my life in prison. But I used to walk in there and just sit down just because something had teed me off on the yard. And because I didn't put my hands on this person, I used to come and sit there and smolder at the desk with a piece of paper and a pencil in front of me that Carol kept pushing in front of me. But I'm glad that she did. I'm glad that what was built between her and I is still here. I've been knowing her now since I think 2011. Yeah, since 2011, and I'll probably know her for the rest of my life. You know, but yeah, but I'm done. I'm good.
Well, thank you, Isiah. That was even more moving than last time I heard you speak. And it leaves me with a lot of questions, but I think that probably more importantly, it would be nice to hear from some of the audience. Now, Carol and Isiah have known each other for quite a long time, but you may have questions for each other too. So let's open it up.
Okay. I always say Carol go first.
So, yeah, and if anyone else has questions, that's wonderful. We love talking, but yeah, thanks, Isiah. You know, getting to know you and seeing your growth and your changes. And I love your artwork and your attitude. It's just, you know, you make my life a lot richer. And, you know, it's just, and your family that I've gotten to know a little, and your lovely daughter that I like. And yeah, so it's just amazing, the relationships and the awareness of the world. You know, Isiah and I wouldn't have met otherwise probably, and that's not
Right.
a great way to meet, obviously, but it's just
But it
amazing.
worked.
Yeah, you meet people that you know, share so much with and respect so much, and it's just like, wow, you know, the world is bigger than my experience has been. So and I love seeing how you somehow, so I have a question for you, coincidentally. So, you know, because I look at like those beautiful stipple pieces and the amount of time they take, like you were talking about, like how does being out now, being free, change your connection and relationship with your artwork from how it was inside?
Okay, so that's not an easy question to start off with, but I think for me, it has changed because when I was inside, the pressures, the stressors that I was going through are totally different than what I'm going through out here. I'm not sitting here saying that out here there are no stresses, but they're different, you know. And so when I was inside, most of the time it's a matter of life and death. And so I had to be really on point as far as how I was living my life. So in my strokes and my work, it always had to do with me trying to control and express my emotions in a more positive way than I've ever did it before. And so what changed is the stressors, because in there I was worried about, it was more or less about trying to stay alive and what should I do. You know, in prison, a guy can't walk up and just say anything to you, and you can't just, and you're not supposed to just do anything, you know? And so learning to deal with that through art, that's why I used to go to the art room. Somebody would piss me off and I walk off and I have to find a way to release this. So I started using art. But out here, my stresses are different. I don't worry about a person killing me. I worry about trying to buy gas. You know, I'm not doing bad, but I'm just saying these are the things that cross my mind out here, and that's the difference. So I guess it has changed, and to some point it's still the same because I'm still expressing emotion, but it's not so detrimental anymore.
We have a question from Sally Nelson. You want to go ahead, Sally?
Great. Isaiah, I just want to say how much I appreciate the honesty of what is so close to your heart and your courage in sharing that with people with the rest of us who you don't know, haven't met before, and to help us open our eyes to what you've been going through. And I'm really grateful that well, just grateful for your honesty and your courage. Thank you. And
Well, thank
your artwork is fabulous.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So I guess I'll come back towards Claire unless it's another question waiting.
I see
We've
a
got-
question.
We've
Yeah.
got Fuad Satterfield asking a question. Go ahead and unmute, Fuad.
Sorry about that. Thank you so much, Isiah and Carol. I really got a great deal out of your narrative, and it was most extraordinary experience of your lives. Just my question is, where do you intend to take your work now? I mean, how do you see yourself using art to continue your own development, both to you and Carol and Isiah? And how do you continue to share this with obviously members of the community inside, inside institutions as well as people outside? Just be curious, and how might we assist you in that process? I mean, I would be most open to consulting at some point, and maybe just because I think that this narrative, this evolution, this sojourn that both of you have been on, speaks deeply about the quality of compassion, of caring about other people beside ourselves as we are evolving. And I think that's the most important thing. So I'll let that just be my question. Thank you.
I'm going to interrupt and say that for those of you who don't know, Fuad is a renowned painter, a beautiful, beautiful work. And enough said. Isaiah.
And I'll do what I always do. Carol, you can go first.
Well, thank you, Fuad. Coming from you, that's extra special and kind offer to consult I mean, how to keep growing with the work and making it deeper and connecting to people is always for me, sometimes it just happens and sometimes it's like, how do I reach people with this? So that's a meaningful thing to think about. And, I think for me, this more recent work I've done these last few years bring me closer to experiencing work as something that helps me, that's healing, more than, other work that might have been a little more intellectually based or, there's something about, I think it's just the tactile side of it, the actual making and working. And I do love the idea of sharing that, like workshop wise, or people working together, making things, and a way that connects us and helps us heal. I don't know quite how to make that happen. Well, maybe you've got great ideas on that, but Isaiah, what do you have to say?
Okay, for me, it's a little different. As far as the art goes, I utilize art out here a lot. I'm also a licensed substance abuse counselor. And so a lot of times when I'm working with clients, it's good, I use art the same way I use it on myself, for them to help to express themselves. Because a lot of times people come in, they're lost, they're afraid, they're unsure of themselves, and they say they don't know what they want. But through art, I feel that they can find what they want just by painting what they're thinking, and then let them go back and look at it. So with me, my artwork, I would like to see it continue to grow. I go to Laney College. Sometimes I think it's twice a year. I used to be at Berkeley College also, and I help assist in a class as far as teaching art and self-expression through art. So I'm attempting to make sure that my art stays with me, keeps moving forward. It's just a matter of getting my foot into the right places and continue teaching.
Jokey, are you with us? And I see that you're muted, but are you with us? I see that Jokey Wilson is trying to be with us. I'm very proud to say he's a former student of mine many, many years ago, who is quite a surprising and original artist here in San Francisco, but he's actually on a ship. He's actually on a cruise, so he goes in and out. So let me turn it over to someone else. I think Haji.
Please unmute.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Hagit.
Hagit.
Hello.
Hello.
And I am a friend of Carol, and I've been with Carol at artist group, so I know the work, but I really love the presentation and how you talk about it. So thank you. And I just wanted to say, Isiah, I was blown away by your presentation. Just what you had to say and your art and the amount of so much vision that came into your work. And it's just really touched me deeply. So I just wanted to express my gratitude, and I'm so glad I was able to join you today. Thank you.
Humbly, I say thank you very much. I really appreciate your words.
So can I ask you a question, Isiah?
Yes, Carol, come on.
Could you see, people get, like when you're first out and going through parole and transitional housing and everything's so crazy and busy, is there a way you can see that if art programs would be available, music, art, like we have art inside, that could even make sense in that busy, crazy time? Would you see it a way? And if so, would you describe exactly how we can do that and get it funded? No.
Okay, you're going to pay for that one. Okay, so so during the transitional period from coming out of a prison, coming into a world out here, I think for me, and it was a hard time. What my art did for me was it gave me an outlet, so I could be able to sit down and think without overloading myself. So when guys first get out of prison as a transitional tool, I think it would be it'll be easy to open up a class and somewhere to help them, because everything we know, especially for us long terms, everything we know is prison. You're talking about guys. I was a shorty. I got 21 plus 5 years out here makes 26 total. There's guys got 42 years, 30 something years. I barely remember, when cell phones got started, and there's some guys never seen a cell phone. So I think that to utilize art in the same way I did it when I was inside, as a tool of expression, is a good way of helping guys who are transitioning from prison to the outside world. It just gives them something to some way of expressing themselves. But yes, if we can get some kind of I've talked with Arts and Correction. We've talked about this here. William James Foundation, about doing some artwork and for transitional housing for people coming out of prison. So yes, it's a possibility, and yes, it's in the air right now. We just got to find the way of financing it.
Could really help people. Yeah.
So Carol, so let me ask you one. So you're working inside of a prison as a woman, as a person who's never been in prison, I don't think. What is it like working inside of, especially when you're in these here men prisons that are extremely violent in some cases? How is that for you?
Well, because when I started, and that was, I visited a couple of the prisons outside LA doing workshops, but I was basically really nervous and scared, understandably, I think. And, you know, I had no idea, like everybody else. It's like what you might have seen on TV or a movie is it for me. And, you know, and I think it's the studio, you know, that, and all the prisons had a studio, and a lot of them now you just have a studio like space in a cafeteria or something. But I think that was so welcoming and so on some level familiar, like being in an art space and seeing people working, and that synergy, that energy with everyone doing their own thing, but connecting and supporting each other by doing that. So it became unscary pretty soon. And, you know, my first going in, and then of course, working with the women was a different sort of scary. And I mean, you know, again, people I might not have met otherwise, and learned so much from. I mean, I think that just the amazing thing is it just keeps educating me or opening my mind to people and their potential and who we all are really. So, and now going in and out of San Quentin is pretty familiar. And of course, unlike most prisons, they have a ton of visitors and, you know, a lot more than most places. And so there's a lot, the men there are very polite and respectful as you walk by, and, you know, it's oddly comfortable. And we do have groups coming in, like the class from Berkeley City College that you mentioned, they come in sometimes. And a lot of other groups come in to visit. We sometimes have performances and things that are open to a limited public that, you know, we can't, COVID is changing a lot of that for now. But, you know, what happened to me was humanly connecting to individuals, especially in the beauty of a shared community of a studio and working around art together and loving art. And me being in this role where I'm sort of like this, I see it as this bird flying, taking the artwork out, you know, like building the nest out there or something, taking work out and bringing back reactions. And, you know, I just met people. I mean, that's the core thing. When people come inside and visit and chat, talk about the art, you know, people say, oh, it's like visiting a graduate studio sometimes, talk how serious somebody is and what's behind their work. It's just people. And, you know, that's what I hope people get some sense of with the exhibits, that it's not scary anymore. It's actually oddly comforting. I don't have my phone. I'm in this, the men are very protective of all the visitors, the teachers. I don't feel unsafe. And, you know, other than the guards and the general antagonism that's in the air, I mean, it's not easy, but I feel protected in there now. And I think all the teachers and, you know, people working on behalf of the individuals there feel that from who I've talked to. And especially you'd be surprised, but as women, younger even, but that's different. But, you know, there's a sense of protecting the women there that I've been told by many of the guys. So, yeah.
All right, I got one more if I have the time. So,
Well,
Carol.
I was going to say we were actually 5 minutes away to ending.
Okay.
All right.
But I'm sure everyone would love to hear the questions. So please go ahead, Isiah.
Oh, this is a good question. So, Carol, so suppose I wanted to go inside and see your art room. You don't go the way I went through the prison system, but is there another way? Is there a way that people, just everyday people, can get inside and maybe come by and visit the art room?
We have to organize that through William James Association, who I'm, the contractor we work with. And usually it's not just anybody. There has to be a benefit to the folks inside. It's not just a voyeuristic situation. So we do have guest artists come in and present about their work and learn about the work there and or work with a project. We have curators or people from the outside. We had this big show at the San Francisco Opera. A couple of those people come in. So it's not openly available to visit. It's often educational groups or artists or speakers. Yeah. So.
Well, may I ask Carol and Isiah, do you have any ideas for artists who might want to see a special show or apply for an opportunity or anything like that?
We do happen to have shows coming up. Funny you should ask. So we have this great show at the San Francisco Opera around the opera Fidelio about a prison situation, but they set it in contemporary times. And that show was in October, and it's all moving over to Minnesota Street Project. And there's a San Francisco Arts Education organization, and they have a gallery. Every other gallery there is commercial, but they're the nonprofit, and we'll be displaying that work. And it's all based around themes of the Beethoven opera, justice and freedom and loyal love. Things, justice and freedom, are pretty frequent themes in the artwork we see. And it's some incredible work, including Isiah's. And that opening, and I don't have PR printed up from anywhere yet. It's going to be Saturday, August 20th from 4 to 7 at Minnesota Street Project. And usually if there's one opening, there's multiple openings. So put that on your calendar. And our prisonartsproject.org that I work with will have stuff posted there, Facebook and Instagram for that name, Prison Arts Project. So there's that. And then we're working with an upcoming incarceration themed show called at Berkeley Art Museum. It's going to open August 27th. And in the art lab downstairs, they're going to have artwork from the men at San Quentin around the themes of freedom and injustice, basically. And there'll be a chance workshop days where people can write letters and it'll go back inside. And then they print a zine of all the artwork that was contributed from inside, and then a risograph zine. And then the guys all get copies of that. So that's another, I recommend that show at Berkeley Art Museum, Undoing Time, Art and Incarceration, about art and how the art world or art has been dealt with incarceration. But the people that are involved are wonderful. So, and then we're working with a UN Peace Flag project, but that's a little more in the future, but pretty amazing.
Thank you, Carol.
That's the best way to find out what you just said, to go to the prisonartsproject.org.
Well, our Facebook and Instagram will list, and those will appear on the website, all that use that prisonartsproject.org. But the Minnesota Street Project show, I'm pretty sure that their website will also, minnesotastreetproject.com, will have it later.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, anything else? Isiah, did you want to share anything?
No, I just want to tell you and everybody who attended today, I thank you. We thank you. It's having the support of our community that helps uplift us and help lift, especially guys just getting out. It helps to get them started, to give them the right mindset that they are accepted. I felt lonely when I got out, but since I've been in the art world and surrounded by some great people who are in art, It's just wonderful, and I hope they get a chance to get out here and experience each and every one of you.
Thank you.
Thank you for this opportunity, and thank you all for attending.
All right. Well, I guess we're at the end of our time. I would like to, well, Pamela, do you have any last words before we sign off?
Yes, I actually do. And that's, it's hard to imagine another program that doesn't have Carol and Isiah on it. But we'd love for you to come back and see us on August 17th, where in a show, in a program, we will host fiber artists, Ruth Tobaccone and Stephanie Metz, who were both fiber artists, and they use fiber in unusual ways, incorporating sometimes very disturbing ideas and references. One of the artists actually creates viruses out of fiber. So please come join us.
Wonderful. And I want to mention, if you are interested in presenting as an artist at a future artist exchange event, you can send an email to Pamela Blotner@gmail.com. And if you were moved by today's presentation and want to support the work that Gallery Route 1 does to inspire people to experience the world in new ways through art, then click on the link that I'm about to put in the chat and select Community Outreach Donations and then Artists Exchange. And thanks again, everyone, for being here this evening, and hopefully we'll see you at our next event.
Thanks.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye. Thank you, Carol and Isiah. That was wonderful.